What's up, guys? Welcome to the first episode of the 20 Percenters podcast. I'm here at Active Health Scottsdale with Dr. Joe Cooperman.
Howdy.
How are you, man?
I'm good, man. Thanks for coming by.
Yeah, man. I really appreciate you making the time, especially for the first episode of the transition away from Feed Me, Fuel Me. We had a really awesome conversation about your evolution away from a life of partying and figuring it out to discovering your passion and then creating this awesome co-op with a group of your friends and creating impact both in a positive direction, both for you and obviously everybody that you touch through chiropractics. I'm just really impressed with your journey, especially as, the dialogue I want to create revolves around the things that create success, happiness, and fulfillment. And those four things are health, wealth, relationships, and time. And it really seems like as your journey has evolved, you've really captured those principles. And that's kind of, as a matter of application, that's those are the X factors, but those are the four pillars that you really seem to be rolling on right now.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So, but walk us through your journey, man. Like, you got. Now I'll ask some strategic questions along the way, but you've kind of been through it, man.
Yeah, a little bit. So I'm a doctor of chiropractic. That's my main background. And really I guess you could say my journey started off with, when I was in undergrad. I'm originally from Arizona, grew up in Scottsdale, Arizona, and went down to U of A. And, I was one of those students that I was at school. I wasn't really in it. I didn't study hard. I liked to party. I liked to have a good time with my friends. And that's what I seemed to prioritize. And towards the end of my undergrad career, I did get in a little bit of trouble. And I had always thought, maybe I want to be a dentist, all these little things. My brother was going off to dental school, and I kind of followed suit with my brother. He'd give you a little background on him. He played drums, so I played drums. He played in a band, so I wanted to be in a band. So I learned how to play guitar.
Are you younger?
I am younger.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
4 years younger than my brother. And so he went off to dental school, and I thought that would be a cool idea for myself. Oh yeah, I'll do that too. But really, I didn't really have the grades. I didn't have, all these other things that come along with actually going to that step into a doctorate program. And towards the end of my undergrad career, I got a DUI. And that's where I was like, oh shit, I'm screwed. This isn't good. And I graduated, moved home with my parents, and I started working at the Jewish Community Center over here, doing some nutrition consulting and random little jobs that I can do in there just to take up my time and make a little bit of money. And I didn't really enjoy helping people with their nutrition. It was very frustrating for me. I wasn't super passionate about it. And my dad and my brother just kind of sat me down one day, and they're like, what are you doing with your life? What do you just wake up in the morning, you go work out. You come home, you take a nap, then you go to work. And you repeat that every single day. And then you go out with your friends. And it's like, it was like a big punch in the stomach. Like, you're kind of right. And so when I decided to go through the chiropractic route, that was really encouraged by my brother and my dad. So they were like, you should be a chiropractor. Your grandfather was a chiro. This seems like something that would be really good for you. You like to be around people. You like to help people. You want to make a difference. This is the way to do it. And so I was like, okay, I'll kind of flirt with that idea, and maybe physical therapy too.
Okay.
So when I was at the JCC, I followed a bunch of chiropractors and PTs around, and everybody practiced so differently in chiropractic. And but one thing that they all had in common is they all loved their job. They all were really stoked to show up. Their patients loved them. And I met a guy that said, you know what, man, you're going to go through school, and you're going to hear a lot of jargon. You're going to hear a lot of philosophies. You're going to hear a million techniques. He said, just find your own, do what you do, and just have fun with it, and you'll love your life. And so I was like, all right, cool. So I decided to go visit Palmer West out in San Jose. And I got there, and I met some students, sat in a class, and I was like, this is awesome. Everybody there was young, fit. They were all super healthy, very health conscious, and it looked like a very active community. I was like, okay, I like to work out. And so I was like, let's do this. So I got to school, and even getting there, I was still in that little bit of a weird place for myself where I was like, I was kind of working this job at the JCC in Palo Alto so I could work because school is super expensive. I thought I needed more money. And I just wasn't in it on the studying portion. And that came and bit me in the ass. And, my friends, these guys that I met that became, some of my best friends today, Dan Skinner, Demir Simonech, and Chris McBroom, they did a very similar thing to what my dad and my brother did to me. They're like, dude, you're investing a lot of fucking money in this. Like, school is not cheap. It's over $220,000, and you're about to become a professional. Let's do this. So they kind of encouraged me to start doing more clubs with them, and then I fell in love with manipulation. Like, we went to this seminar of this guy, Dan McClure, and he taught extremities, and blew my mind with what the guy could do and just changing range of motion in a matter of, 0.1 seconds. And I was like, I need to learn how to do that. So, we really highly encourage each other to just try really hard when we're in school. And then that's just kind of how I progressed into really finding my passion and really coming into my own.
Yeah.
And I found it all through, a lot of encouragement from others.
Sure.
And it wasn't like something that I was like, I woke up one day and I was like, I need to do this. It was just more of like I don't know. I think if you had a conversation with my friends, they kind of tell you like how I evolved, and they talk about it a lot, how crazy it is. Like when they first met me versus like, as we are today.
Sure.
And, I don't know. It's kind of fun.
That's awesome, man. So it sounds like you have what I like to call accidental mentorship.
Yeah.
Right. And I think when we use the word, a lot of people think it comes from, us looking up or from the top down, right? But mentorship comes at all three levels, from the top down, amongst your peers, and then even the people that you teach and mentor have the ability to teach you something.
Absolutely.
Right. And, you just have to have the awareness to accept it for what it is, regardless of where it comes from. Because I think there's a lot of missed opportunities for lessons to be learned because we get the message confused with the messenger, right? As you made that transition from party boy to professional, did you go through a phase where you kind of felt yourself to be, that imposter syndrome? Like, a lot of people who like stick around their hometown and make that turn and turn that corner kind of go through that process where everybody knows who you were, and you're trying to make this positive shift, and you kind of run into this negative self narrative about, am I really?
Yeah.
Did you go through that?
You know what? I don't think I did. It was just more of a, I was out in California, so I wasn't surrounded by people that knew me.
Okay.
And especially, I feel like, getting out of school, when I graduated, I decided to move to Sacramento after my internship. Okay. And I was like, you know what? I don't know anybody in Sacramento. Didn't even know it was, if someone said point to it on a map, I had no idea. And I took this opportunity to go work for this chiropractor out there, and have the potential of buying out his practice. And I was like, you know what? I love Cali. It's a great place. Northern California is gorgeous. Yep. And I just said, let's just start. And I feel like that of me just kind of being like coming into my own like throughout school, and then just going to a place where people didn't know me. They'd have to get to know me, and for what I am now versus what I was. I feel like it was just really natural for me to just kind of just go with the role and see what happens. Yeah. And, I absolutely loved my time in Sacramento, and it was a huge decision to leave there. And, coming back to Arizona where people grew up with me. Right. Now I'm getting back into, I rekindled an old flame with a good friend. I mean, he was my first friend I made when we moved to Scottsdale. And, he knew me when I was in high school, and I was just this little ass clown kid, punk rocker, who would sometimes work out. And then in college, the party boy who still knew me then. And then we just kind of we stopped talking. And, him and I are on a very similar path as to like, we don't really party much anymore. Yeah. We know how to get down. Sure. Like, believe me. Right. But, it's not like a priority. It's not like I need to go to the club on Friday, or I but the way that I feel in the mornings after a bout of drinking is it slows me down.
Oh yeah.
And I've got bigger goals than just like having a good time and, cracking jokes all night long. It's, I've got business to do. I've got a life to live. I have things in my life I want, like my girlfriend moved here with me. We moved into an apartment. I would love it if we can purchase a house one day. So I'm not gonna be able to do that if I'm just wasting my time and money on going out with some buddies that, I used to know.
Sure.
So, but yeah, it was kind of cool to like rekindle some old flames, see some old friends. And it seems like everybody's kind of like that, it's not like we're getting a little bit older. I'm 31 years old. And I feel like the party days are behind most people once they turn about 26, 27. And that's a very common theme. And the ones that are stuck in it are people that are just kind of still stuck in that like high school mode.
Sure.
They're trying to impress people around them. And it's like, I can honestly give zero shits if I'm trying to impress somebody or not.
Right.
If they don't like me for who I am, that's fine. And I'm okay with that.
Sure.
And if they think that it's weird that I, choose not to drink and want to go work out and work and network and try to grow my business, then that's fine. That's on them. It's not on me. Like this is my life. I'm going to live it.
Sure.
And I'm not going to let anybody slow me down.
Do you think that displacement to go to chiropractic school up in Northern California gave you an opportunity to really come full circle with who you are and what you really want away from the influence of those that knew you?
Absolutely. I think I needed to get away.
Yeah.
I think that was huge actually. So, I think my girlfriend will kind of attest to this. I have a pretty addictive personality for certain things.
Okay.
One thing that I really enjoy is I love being around people. I love entertaining. And when you have a couple drinks in you, it's even easier to come out of your shell for that.
Sure.
And my friends and I would always have a good time whenever we went out. We never really got in like crazy trouble with people.
Right.
We were always the fun guys, like my friend Edward White and Luke. People were always like, "Oh, those guys are nuts. They're so much fun to be around. Invite them,"
Right.
And going off to California, I just feel like it just brought me completely away from what I was so used to, which was sleep, work, go out, sleep, work, go out, sleep, work, go out. And so just having that be in my rear view mirror is just, I think it helped me a lot.
Yeah. It's one of the things that I go back and forth on, like what's better, being the hometown kid or being raised in the environment I got as a military brat and being somewhere new every 3 or 4 years. And, the advantage to that is the opportunity to reinvent yourself. Yeah. It doesn't matter what your experience was at your last address, your last school, how bad you fucked it up or how awesome it was, you get to start fresh. Yeah. And I can remember, playing this game as I moved from middle school into high school where, we didn't have you didn't have a social media trail behind you back then. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I could go from skater punk rock to Tim's and South Pole jeans to, Abercrombie and Fitch, and nobody would know the difference. Yeah. There was no reference to go off of. So I find a lot of value as we move into adulthood and really discover what we want to do as professionals, a ton of value in just getting comfortable being uncomfortable with that transition, but at the same time removing a lot of the influences for better or for worse so that you can really figure out what it is you really want and discover who you really are. And I think that's where a lot of the value that has that you can attribute to your success up to this point is because of that displacement. Because now you get to make your own decisions. You don't have your old party buddies like, you should do this, but they've got so much sway in your life that you don't. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's and I feel like you kind of learn self-control throughout that time, right? Mm-hmm. So if somebody calls me and they say that, hey, let's go out for some drinks or something, it's like, okay, I can go out. Right. And it's either, if I know the decisions I'm going to make. So it's like, if I'm going to go drink, then I'm going to go drink. But if I'm going to go out and they're going to have drinks, I'm very capable of just sitting there and drinking my iced tea and being content
Right.
and having a good time still. So it's not like I need alcohol in order to make me be fun.
Right.
And I think that that's a pretty important thing for people to learn how to do. You know, I feel bad for the ones that say, you know, I need alcohol in order to come out of my shell. It's like, that's an internal problem.
Sure.
You're using an external stimulus to create an internal influence. And I look at the same way as like exercise or anything else. It's like, oh, I have this pain that I'm dealing with, but whenever I use this band, it tends to make it go away. So now I just do squats with bands on. It's like, wow, you're relying on an external stimulus to create an internal output,
Right.
but yet you can't create it yourself.
Sure.
So I kind of, you know, blend all these little life lessons into, you know, like I see them all as like this very same thing.
Sure.
And I think that's an important thing for people to learn. It's like, you know, you gotta learn how to control yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Sure.
whether it's your body, your instincts, your obsessions, whatever. You know, like right now, I alluded to this, but what my girlfriend was gonna be mad about is like, I used to love kombucha.
Okay.
I would drink crazy amounts of kombucha. And shout out to Revive. All right, dude, the Revive kombucha is delicious. And now I'm on this big Zevia kick.
Okay.
So I drink like 8 Zevias a day.
Jesus.
She's like, you gotta stop drinking so many damn Zevias. You're so addicted to this stuff. And then if I sit down and eat cookies, I'm not having one cookie.
Right.
I'm gonna have 20.
Sure.
But it's just me. You know.
Yeah.
I do what I do.
Right.
I'm like, I'm happy I don't, you know, carry too much, but it'll catch up.
How does those life lessons that you bring into your practice? It sounds like you bring a lot of the personal growth and development stuff into your practice, like and being in fitness and the coaching world. You know, you see somebody often enough. Eventually, it's no longer about what they hired you for.
Yeah.
You know, and you get to really dive deep. When you get to that point, when you have that much rapport with a client, I mean, there's like that line starts to blur between professional and personal, right? In terms of what they're willing to disclose about themselves.
Yeah.
What are some of the roots, the emotional baggage, if you will, that somebody brings to the table that is actually indicative of the symptoms they present?
So who's actually feeling the discomfort of, like, let's say an injury or versus something a little more psychological in nature?
Right.
Okay. So, I'll give you a good example. You know, I had a patient that recently came in who was lifting and heard and felt a pop in their low back. Their low back hurts quite a bit. So, there's this little balance of, like, you know, when you hurt something, you get that acute injury, you hear and feel that pop, it swells, you have inflammation, and it hurts. You can't beat that. But then you get the other person who just kind of bends their back in an odd way over and over again, or they don't really do a whole lot, or maybe they hurt their back like 15 years ago, and they have this fear of hurting their back again.
Sure.
So for some reason it hurts, but yet we test them and we can't find an injury, so to speak. Then normally what I end up doing with them is I put my hands on them. I got to make sure I do that, because that's what I'm paid for. But as we move forward, I try my best to change habits and kind of empower this person with, you can do this. You can go pick up something off the ground and your back's not going to blow up.
Right.
You know, that pencil's not going to blow your back out again. I promise you. We teach you some strategies to get you the confidence that you need in order to do that task. So I would say that when given the opportunity, I definitely hop on it big time, because that's what, to me, you know, like the name Active Health really has a lot more to do with not just like manual therapy. It has a lot to do with having an active, healthy lifestyle.
Right.
Making new habits in your life, whether that's nutritionally, psychologically, or even financially, right?
Sure.
So, and I'm probably not the guy to talk to about finances. You know, I'm just opening my practice. I'm new to it. I'm not swimming in money or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I'm learning how to save. I'm learning how to do those things. And if someone's having troubles with it, I'll teach them my strategies, and hopefully it helps them. If they think it's dumb, then at least they heard something. It's an option they're not going to do.
Right.
And so, you know, I look at myself as like, you know, doctor means teacher. So I have to be have to be pretty, what's the word I'm looking for?
Well-rounded.
Yeah, you have to have a pretty good overall idea of like life, and I'm learning it as I go. You know, I'm only 31.
Right.
I don't have a whole lot of experiences underneath my belt that I would love to have when I turn 50 and look back and be like, dang, I was 31 and I was saying that. You know, like, but it's really important to me that my patients understand it's not just about me getting them out of physical pain. It's about me helping them change their life and giving them the tools that they need in order to continue to progress.
Right.
And hopefully not have things come back and bite them in the ass again.
Sure.
So, you know, I use fitness as a big outlet for them because, you know, general population, they're not exercising.
Right.
They're counting their steps, and that's a pretty big win for them. And that's cool. That's fine. I'm happy about that. But I think it takes a lot more than just steps to make you feel good and be considered healthy.
Right.
And so I try to talk to people about that kind of stuff, let them know my true feelings on it. And, you know, hopefully, you know, maybe like sometimes the message is not well perceived. And I got probably work on like my delivery.
Sure.
But I feel like as I've been growing as a doctor I've been in practice for about 4.5 years now. And, you know, each person is so wildly different.
Right.
And I can't say the same thing to one person in order to get the same result. And recently, you know, like one big thing for my practice is, you know, I write mobility programs for each one of my patients that sees me.
Okay.
And I would always write them out, and maybe like, you know, 60% of the people would do it. And you know, it's in the other 40%, it's like, man, what a waste of time and a waste of energy. Like I need to come up with a better solution. And I met another chiropractor at a seminar, and he told me something that he's really done for the past couple of years is if I will you. And I think I talked to you about that last time. And that's helped me a lot.
Sure.
And so it just gets right to it. It's like, if I write this program, will you do it? They say no, cool. I'm not going to waste my time with it. You need to come in here and I need to treat you more.
Right.
Simple as that.
Sure.
You're not going to get better with one treatment. And you're not willing to do the active part of what we're trying to do. I'm not going to force it upon you because it's not your personality. It's not what you want to do.
Right.
And that's okay. But if you are willing to do it and you say yes, and then I get on you and I say, you've been doing your hamstring stuff, and they say, oh no. It's like, all right, well, let's go do it right now.
I think it's interesting, that approach, if I will you, because it really gives you an opportunity, obviously, so that you're not wasting your time. But at the same, it also presents an opportunity for you to meet them where they're at. You know, you really understand where they're at in terms of that hierarchy of commitment. You know, like, are they just in it for the quick fix, or are they looking for long-term results? And there's multiple avenues to get to that finish line. But it really gives you the ability to strategize your treatment strategy. Yeah. To not overuse the word.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah. It's an art.
Yeah.
You know, like manual medicine is an art. Talking to people is an art. It's tough.
Yeah.
I struggle with it every single day. But I think I'm pretty good at it at the same time. But that's just because I'm really hard on myself, and same with my buddies. You know, like we're really hard on each other about trying to be the best versions of ourselves for our patients and for our loved ones. And it's like, you know, when we deal with something that seemed challenging in practice, you know, we've got our text message group. We're like, hey, I need some help. Yeah. And you know, you get multiple ideas on how to address the same situation. And we got 4 people that are willing to put in some input. We're all very similar, but at the same time, we have a very different perspective on things. Right. So like my friend Dan Skinner out in Victoria, he'll probably be a little more like, he's the lovey one, right? He's got a great way with words. And then I've got my buddy in Reno, Chris. He's the tough one. He's the stern one. He's like, yeah, just do it. You know, like you got to get in there and let them know. And then you've got Demir, who's like a good blend of both. And then I'm not quite sure where I sit in that category, but I also think I'm probably a little more more towards like Chris's way. And you know, like having Dan and Demir be able to give those other options is like, I mean, it's so helpful. Right. And my patients get to experience that, which is really cool. So it's like if they ever are in one of their towns, they know they're going to get something that's like wildly similar in their head because they're like, that's so odd. Joe speaks that way. You know, like the
Sure.
words that we use are very similar. They just might have a very different way of approaching it.
The delivery
Itself. And then, you know, our hands are very, very similar.
Okay.
And so they're not exactly the same. No hands are exactly the same. You'll never find a massage therapist, a chiro, a PT, anybody that does manual therapy. They'll never be the same unless they use a tool. So like cupping.
Got it.
You know, cupping and Graston. Graston might be one of those things that you might find someone that feathers it versus someone that really grinds in there.
Yeah.
But I think the hand stuff is really what sets people apart, at least in my profession, along with their words.
Right. Where do you feel you sit in the genre of medical treatment? We've heard it over and over and over again from conventional medicine, I'll call it, who don't really find chiropractics valid in terms of its efficacy.
Yeah.
And does it really work?
For sure.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's got mild opinions about certain things. But you know, what's really cool about our profession is that as the scientific method gets better and better through time, the research does get to seem a little more favorable along with our profession. So over the past like 15 to 20 years, there's more and more studies that are coming out with bigger and bigger populations that are actually showing, it's pretty valid and very safe to be using as a technique to help people feel better.
Sure.
You know, low back pain is a $8 billion industry in America.
Holy shit.
So it's, you know, we're a very small piece of that puzzle.
Yeah.
We're not the end all be all, but it's a tool, you know, just like as exercise is a tool. And I think really what dogged on the chiropractic world was really what happened with them in, I believe it was the 60s, when the American Medical Association just said, we're not including them. And doctors of osteopathy, if you want to be a part of our group, you got to listen to us. So they said, we'll do that. And Chiro said, screw you. We're doing our own thing. They're lone wolves. You know, they're totally lone wolves. And I would say that as like, where do I see myself in that little, the medical hierarchy? You know, we were taught how to diagnose, which is something that's really valuable.
Sure.
So if someone comes to me, I can say, this is a disc issue.
Okay.
Whereas like a massage therapist or somebody else, or I think some PTs, it depends on the state you're in, but they can't physically diagnose somebody.
Okay.
They were not allowed to say, this is an L5S1 issue. We need to address it. In their head, they know it is,
right,
because they've had the experience, they got the schooling, but you know, it's just a restraint on the practice, the scope of practice.
Right.
So our scope of practice is actually very, very broad. The only thing we can't do is, you know, injections.
Sure.
If you wanted to, you just go to nurse practitioner school. Now, voila, you can do it.
Right.
So, you know, I see myself as more, I like to call it like, you know, modern chiropractic.
Yeah.
It's nothing fancy. You know, it's just a newer philosophy that's getting rid of the old stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like I know on some other podcasts, people like to talk about, you know, what happened in 1864. And it's like, well, if we're going to bring that up, you might as well bring up, you know, how George Washington died. You know, like he died because his medical doctors were leeching him and he died.
Right.
You know, so is leeching a good idea? Do medical doctors still leech people? It's actually making a comeback.
Yeah.
And
I do wet cupping now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, you pick and choose like what you want to, I guess, believe.
Right.
And for me, it's just more about results, man. Like if someone comes to me and they say, bring your arms up over your head, and they feel pinching, tightness, you name it. And I address, like, let's say some sort of scapulothoracic dysfunction in a matter of less than a second. And they bring their arm up over their head and they're like, holy crap.
Yep.
It's never been able to go up that high.
Sure.
And it doesn't hurt, or it hurts less, whatever. Even if it still hurts, but it hurts less, that's progress.
Sure.
And so I think that, you know, it's just a miscommunication in the world and their understanding of what it is we do.
Sure.
It's the old days of your bone's out of place, so we're going to push it back in.
Yeah.
That's slowly dwindling away.
Sure.
And, you know, that's not what they really teach us in school. They teach us a very modern approach that's actually really in line with with the medical profession.
Okay.
And so I get along great with medical doctors,
That's
you know,
awesome.
and my training with the sports background, over at St. Mary's, you know, I worked side by side with an orthopedic surgeon, and I worked with some physical therapists and athletic trainers and strength coaches.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, they were like, all right, this is a chiro thing.
Yeah.
Boom, chiro.
Love it.
They're like, and then if no one can figure it out, it's like, okay, well now that's where good assessments come in, skill set, and all these other things. Maybe not all chiropractors are really good at diagnosing a hamstring strain.
Right.
Or, you know, like a Liz Frank issue on the foot, you know, like that's knowledge.
Yeah.
And if you're familiar with it, you can identify it, you're going to help a lot of people. And I like to put myself in that category because I was trained really well. I feel like my teachers are awesome. You know, there's certain things that I didn't like about school. There's certain things I loved.
Right.
And just staying up on, you know, actual research, you know, taking the time to read something and not just being like, I'm going to read an abstract to some article that's by PubMed. It's like, no, I'm actually read the whole thing.
Right.
What was the population size? What were the methods?
Absolutely.
And understanding what a good p-value means, you know, and if you don't know what that means, then you don't understand research. And it's really hard for me to have a conversation with someone about research if they've never even taken an evidence-based class that teaches them how to read it or break down what an article is. Because there's a big bias that comes into reading things.
Yeah, those the magazine doctors, I like to call them. You know, they like you said, like you alluded to, they only read the abstract.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like that research was done on postmenopausal 50-year-old Caucasian women.
Yeah, that doesn't apply to a 20-year-old
You're in the prime
dude.
of your athletic career, you know, pumping testosterone, man. Like, what does that evidence have to do with your situation?
Yeah, very little.
Very little.
Very little
You
to
know?
me.
So, like, you know, people go off the rails citing these studies that are incongruent with what they're actually trying to address.
Yeah.
You know, and but I love the fact that you have the ability to diagnose. I didn't know that. I thought that was like an additional credential above and beyond your initial scope of practice.
Yeah, no, it's part of it.
I didn't know that was part of the base of your education.
Yeah, it's a big time. I mean, gosh, we had an awesome professor, Dr. Tom Souza, and I mean, that book is being used in some medical schools. It's being used in most sports medicine programs. It's being used in, I think, about 80% of doctor of physical therapy schools.
Okay.
You know, that book is his differential diagnosis book. It's a huge textbook. That was my teacher.
Nice.
So it's like the book is very valuable, but when you get to learn it from the guy that wrote it, and then he's like, you know, we're going to go through page 100 to 120 and we're going to just rip all those pages out because this is the new material for that.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're getting it before everybody else does.
Sure.
And man, the guy's a genius, and he was a phenomenal instructor.
Right.
Because if most of us really soaked in that information and practiced it, and
Sure.
he's all about clinical application.
Yeah.
He's like, no, identify when you're supposed to test this and, you know, be smart.
Yeah.
Know what you're supposed to look for, because not all tests are created equally.
Sure.
Specificity versus sensitivity. And what's a positive versus a false positive?
Yeah.
How do you know that this is impingement versus like a rotator cuff tear? And so, you know, he really honed in on us and just like cracked the whip and said, you need to know this. This will make you great.
Yeah.
He said, after that, you got to get good with your hands. So, but for me and my friends, we did it the complete opposite way. We said, we got to get good with our hands. And then we're going to learn all this stuff. So when we got to that point in our schooling career, we were those assholes at school that were wildly confident in our manual skills comparatively.
Sure.
We always, you know, we're white belts always, but at the same time, you know, we were confident enough to say, lay down, I'll make some noise with that body and I'll stretch some things out and make some changes. But now we got to figure out, when do we do it? Right? Versus just being like, hey, look at this. You know, I can make some pops in the middle of your foot. It's pretty cool. So, you know, we took it a little more of a backwards approach than I think most students.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big reason why our manual skills were pretty good. You know, you can give me, you know, people think that the really large dudes are hard to treat. Sometimes they are.
Yeah.
But you give me a female that's the average American who might be, a little bit overweight, and she's hypermobile.
Oh yeah.
That's where real skills come in.
Sure.
The big guys, it's like, dude, just use some force.
Okay.
You're gonna make some noise with their joints, and you can make some quick changes. But the hypermobile female, that's probably the hardest one.
Sure.
To actually do manual therapy on.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and I think my friends would agree with that statement.
Yeah.
And then you get yourself someone who's just beaten down their bodies just ridiculously over 20 something years.
Yep.
Those bodies are stiff. It's like stone,
This guy.
So it takes a little time, but after you get a little more mobile, that
Sure.
stuff starts to open up pretty good.
Yeah. I love the piece of your narrative that's so results driven in terms of whether they come see you or a massage therapist or whatever, it works. And if it works, keep going.
Yeah. Keep doing it.
It's like when people ask me, why CrossFit? Having come from collegiate sports to the Marine Corps to bodybuilding and landing in CrossFit, because I like it.
Yeah.
Because it works.
Exactly.
Like I never understood why the answer needed to be more complex than that.
Absolutely.
Because there's principles that can't be violated in this game, no matter what methodology you try to use. There's certain inescapable principles, progressive overload, periodization, specificity. You can't get away from that stuff. And then how you apply those principles, that's the shit that we can argue about all day long.
Of course.
But at the most basic level, these are the things that are congruent across the entire spectrum.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, with my background in the strength and conditioning and working with St. Mary's, it was, why is this athlete not getting stronger, faster, or whatever the result we're looking for is. So that's where you break down those principles, right? It's like, well, what's the specificity we need to go to? This person really doesn't do a lot of lateral lunges, and we should probably start programming that in a little bit more, and let's do that progressive overload on that. We'll wean off on certain other things to make sure they're staying safe. And then what do we see the result that we're looking for. And it's just breaking down your method. You can have a simple method at first. I think simplicity is key.
For sure.
Everybody, the thing about the internet right now is everybody's trying to do something new. And there's nothing new out there.
Right.
It's very, very hard to come up with something new, especially in fitness. Like if you think that you're doing something that no one else is doing, you're not looking deep enough.
Right.
You're only looking at yourself. And I have a big problem with that because I think that it's like a self-proclaimed guru. Like follow my method. My method's the one. Well, how did you learn your method? Oh, well, I went to so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and I blended all those things together. Okay, so you're taking 3 different principles and bringing them all together. So who is that? That's those 3 people that originally came up with that, who learned it from someone else back in the day. Or they're taking yoga principles, like little things like that. It's like, this is nothing new.
Right.
And everybody's looking for this fancy new stretch or fancy new core exercise or fancy new overhead lift. And it's like, just lift overhead and see what happens. Like if it's not good, if your lower back is hyper arched and something's pinching, that movement's not for you right now.
Sure.
It's just, I have a big issue with that with the internet.
Yeah.
That's a big struggle of mine. It drives me a little bonkers sometimes. Other times I'm like, it is what it is. But when it ends up on my table, which has been doing a lot recently,
sure,
it's like, you know what? We're gonna go back to the basics. You don't even know how to breathe. Let's teach you that.
Yeah.
You want your mind to blow? Like take a breath and try to use your diaphragm and try to let your belly expand a little bit. A lot of people can't do that.
Sure.
And so, it's teaching them the basics, the rooted basics that tend to work.
Yeah.
Whether that's in strength and conditioning, in chiropractic, in physical therapy, in surgery, the basics. They don't need to do anything fancy.
Yeah.
You got a bicep tear. What kind of fancy thing do you need to do for that? If it's balled up here, you grab it, pull it down, suture it. They don't need to we do this super fast technique where it ends up doing this and that and blah, 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 yada, yada. And then we throw some stem cells in there. It's like, okay. what about what they were doing for the past 30 years that seems to be working pretty well?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think about that quite a bit. And it's like, and sometimes, you know, with that progression of trying stuff that's a little too hard for you, or maybe it's too unique. It's not going to help. You're just going to be, it's like beating a dead horse. You're not moving it. And, you know, I talk to people about that with stretching. You know, I see, you know, someone with a barbell on their back and they're doing a forward fold with their legs wide on the ground, but yet they can't even, you know, their hamstring mobility is horrible. And it's like, you're trying to forcefully use this barbell on your back and your lower back's just cranked open into flexion. You're asking for it. It's not, you want to know why you keep getting tighter? It's because your body feels a threat.
Right.
It thinks it's going to get hurt.
Sure.
So neurologically speaking, it's like, be smart and do the simple thing. Lay on your back and just bring your leg up towards the sky.
Yeah. Right.
It's not fancy, but it works.
Sure. I think too many people get involved in trying to apply the sexy, you know, and there's a place for that at like the upper end, you know, when you're dealing with, you know, elite athletes and stuff like that, where it takes this much work to make that much progress because they've got so much training behind them, right? Yeah. That's where that really sexy shit is like
big time skill
required.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But at the most basic level, general physical preparedness, you know, like stick to what works, man. The fundamentals will never lose.
That's true. They're always going to be around.
Yeah.
They're always going to be around.
You know, there's a reason that, you know, squatting and pressing and pulling, you know, like from a principle standpoint, that's what we're doing every single day. Squat, press, pull, run, jump. Yep. You know, that's the stimulus.
That is.
You know, how you apply that shit, that's what we can argue about.
Exactly.
But
you might have your own twist and flavor to it. And maybe one day you're going to be like, all right, now we're back deep rooted to the basics. You know, you're just going to stand in place and you're going to bring your knees up towards your chest, jump as high as you can, or keep your legs perfectly straight, jump as high as you can.
Right.
Just see where you're at.
Sure.
You know, always bringing it back to that deep rooted fundamental.
You can't abandon the fundamentals.
No.
You know?
Yeah. You see the best lifters in the world. What do they start off doing? They start with the fundamental movement of a hip hinge. Like let's say he's a deadlifter. He's not just going to go out there and be like, all right, throw a 550 on the bar. I'm going to rip this thing off the ground because I have a 1,000-pound deadlift. It's like, no, he's going to, you know, see how it feels with barbell.
Do some good mornings.
Open it up. And then he's going to progressively get to that number that he was looking for. And, you know, why would you do anything different than what the best in the world are doing?
Sure.
So,
yeah. I mean, when you talk about scalability, and I actually had this conversation with one of my professors in grad school, you know, because a lot of the protocol is designed for the general populace, where we take the people at the lower end of the spectrum and we try to scale them up to average. Well, I'm of the belief that if we take the best practice of the people that are performing at the best and scale that down, right, that's where we can find the best, the most amazing results.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of people just they want to argue with that, but you know, scaling down to me is much more efficacious than trying to scale up.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and I think about that with some athletes that I work with and help them out with some strength and conditioning. I don't need to teach them how to do a bird dog. You know, like that's working from the ground up. These people are at such a high level. It's like if I do that to them, the stimulus of slowing them down and never having them get to that max potential, it's just not there. But if they're not capable of performing, like let's say like just use a random exercise, let's say like a hang power clean. If they can't perform it, that's fine. Might be something I want to teach them, but there's other ways around that. What's the scalable version of that? Put a kettlebell in their hand, right? Or even just have them do some swings and then have them do some high pulls or something like that. You still get the very similar stimulus to get the same reward.
Right.
It's just you might have to use the weight a little differently. You might have to make the intention of the exercise a little different. Like, oh, hey, on these swings, I want you to be super aggressive, really squeeze that butt, let that kettlebell fly up, and don't pull it with your arms. You know, like really use a hip drive. And but all those things, they can be tweaked. And so it's being able to recognize an exercise or whatever it is and being able to adjust.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
For that person's specific needs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, dude, I really appreciate you taking the time today, to, talk about the health, the wealth, the relationships, and the time, as all four of those principles play out in your story and the way that you, and you use them in your practice as well, as you not only treat the physical, but everything outside of the physical as well.
Yeah.
But for everybody out there, tuning in, where can they find you and get a hold of you?
So you can find me on Instagram. It's Active Health _Scottsdale. I have a personal page that's Joe_Cooperman. You guys can find me anywhere there, and I answer messages pretty regularly. And shoot me an email if you need to. That's j.coopermandc@gmail.com. Just got a website pulled up. I made it myself. So
Nice.
give me some feedback on that if you like it or you hate it. That's activehealthscottsdale.com.
Sweet.
Yeah, thank you for having me,
Dude,
man. It's been a pleasure actually meeting you and everything. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate the way you guys approach things, and your podcast is great.
I really
Been listening
appreciate
for
it,
a little
man.
bit, and all the people that I've met that seem to know you guys, you're all great people. And they have nothing but nice things to say.
Thanks,
so
man.
It's cool.
Yeah. Until next time, guys, focus on the things that matter: health, wealth, relationships, and time. See you later.